So, hello. Thank you to everyone that is joining now our fourth annual MVP Winter Webinar Series. We're very excited for all of you that came. Today's topic is going to be the MVP Community Liaison Model Overview and Lessons Learned. Our agenda today is going to be some program updates from the MVP team. Then Andrew Smith here is going to be leading us through an overview and background of the Community Liaison Model. And then we are going to feature a community spotlight from our friends at Medford. And then followed by that, we really want to open up into a discussion and answer any questions that anyone has and really use this as an opportunity to share resources. And then I also just want to note that, again, we will be recording this session and that if anyone has any questions, please put it in the chat. And also, if there's questions when the time comes, what we will do is raise your hand and then we'll unmute you. But when that time comes, we'll walk through the specific details. And then I also just want to put a note here. This is a little bit of background on our MVP program, and these are all the current regional coordinators. So if you are looking for your region specifically and want to reach out to your coordinator, please reach out to us in the chat and we will connect you with them. From here, I'll hand it over to my colleague, Andrew Smith.
Thanks, Patrick. Is my volume good?
Sounds great.
Excellent. All right, so some quick program updates. So first and foremost, the MVP Action Grant is open. So you have until April 4th to submit your RFR responses to us. It's posted on Combis. The link will be in the slides. They're going to be posted later. Basically, you have until Monday, March 10th to get your questions over to the RC. So if you have any questions, any detailed things you need to get reviewed, please email them over to the RCs by March 10th. If you didn't get the RFR announcement, that is usually on our climate team newsletter. So stay up to date on the climate newsletter by clicking that link and subscribing on resilientmass.com. We're also this spring something exciting that's going forward that Hillary King has been working on really hard with MAPC and PVPC is a climate resilience playbook, which is going to be an online interactive tool that local planners can use to identify and scope out resilience projects. It's kind of going to be like a project in a box idea. And it's supposed to come out this spring. And then last but not least, MVP 2.0, we're going to announce the next round of communities they're going to be awarded. We have some updates on like the process itself based upon all the wonderful towns that are working on our pilot round. We have some new additions to the program. We're going to have equity partners. They're going to be working with the towns and with the vendors to help identify community liaisons, identify inclusive engagement strategies. So that's another support that's going to be added. And we've tweaked the process guide as well as updating the gear tools that are available to people. So stay tuned for the announcements and stay tuned for the updates to the program. Next slide. All right, so this is why we're here. So main thing is we're going to talk about community engagement. We're going to ask ourselves, why does community engagement matter in a planning context? So imagine for a second, you're in a town and you just have an opportunity. Here's this blank slate that's in front of you. I like to think of the future as a blank slate. And so you can ask yourself, like, what am I going to do with this opportunity that's in front of me? So next slide, Patrick. Here, just click next. So some of you are just kind of sorry, yeah, and I'll just hit next one. Or actually go back to the forest. Oh no.
That's all right. Sorry. I didn't.
All right. I got my narrative all worked out, so I didn't plan this.
All right. Here you go.
I'm a forest guy. Like some of you are going to think about forest. Like you say, we have this opportunity. We should have forest there, you know? Then you click next. And then next, and some of you might like sports. You think, well, we've always wanted like a sports arena. We need to put a sports arena there. And then click next. And then some of you might say, we've always wanted a water feature. We should do something to add a water feature there, right? But the thing is like, you're not just alone. You have several people who have their own ideas for what they want the future to be. And then click next. And then next. And there's so many people, right? And in order for us to think about the future, we're not just thinking about by ourselves. We're thinking about how we interact with other people. So next. So the truth is, here, click next again. At some point, you're going to need to make a decision about the future. Your community is going to decide how to allocate resources, what policies to put in place, and at some point, a decision needs to be made. So next. So in order to do that, you know, if you have so I might have my vision of the future, but if I'm just doing it by myself, there's very little chance of like my vision of the future coming to fruition. We can only do this together if we bring a lot of people forward with us on this decision-making journey. And then next. And the truth is like not everybody is going to agree with the vision of the future that we select, but if we have a broad, diverse coalition, we are increasing our chances of coming up with a fair, equitable, and just future choice that we're going to choose. All right, let's go back one slide. Oh yeah, sorry, go forward one slide. My bad. So that's why it matters. So, and if you look at the MVP core principles, you'll see that community outcome, like community identified planning processes, equitable engagement, community capacity, like they're all interwoven against the core principles that the MVP program uses for our funding and program determination. So you really think you start to see that this whole idea of involvement in the community and getting people on board to choose a future is interconnected in all of the things that we're trying to accomplish. Next slide. So, with that being said, and why it's important, what has MVP done to encourage past engagement? Well, for the most part, like I said, we prioritize projects that fund. We prioritize funding for projects that center engagement, and like I said before in the earlier, but in the MVP2 process, what we've done is we've structured it so that the community is more deeply involved in the decision-making process, and we've created tools, webinars, resources that you can use in your own community to begin the process of planning more equitably. And most importantly, which I think is really exciting, is that we're working to mainstream the community liaison engagement model, which is what we're here to talk about today. So I'll do a quick background next slide on the community engagement liaison model. And basically, it's like you might not know what it is, you might know a lot about it, but we're going to learn more about it today. The idea mostly is like from the public health world, but the planning, and again, like my understanding of it is that the Seattle's Department of Neighborhoods was really the first sort of local planning department or municipal government that went into this community liaison model from a public participation standpoint. And they have this entire program that they've stood up, which is amazing. You can check it out on seattle.gov/neighborhoods. And it's really worth just seeing what you can do when you're working from this perspective. And so today we're going to learn from our friends from Medford, and you're going to have like tools and techniques they can bring forward. You can learn about recruitment, compensation, responsibilities, and support structures that can be offered to your community liaisons as you move forward. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Medford. Next slide.
Patrick, would you mind allowing me to turn on my camera?
Oh, yeah. Yep. Sorry about that.
Sure. All right, you ready for us? All right, Andrian, I'll let you start.
All right. Okay. So, welcome, and we're super excited to be able to share today, I guess both the journey and the experiences of running the City of Medford Community Liaison Program. We shared this in a Lunch and Learn series to the EEA a couple months back, and we're excited to be able to share this to the folks within this webinar series. And also just a little plug to follow the City of Medford Community Engagement team on the Facebook if you are interested in following. So I guess I'll just introduce myself before we dive into. My name's Andrian. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the founder of ACBC Consulting. I help governments and nonprofits to design community-driven or community-led equitable solutions through participatory service design, actually starting with the City of Medford as my first client. So this is kind of where a lot of my work through my firm started. So I guess...
And I'll introduce myself. My name is Catherine Dingra. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the manager of the City of Medford's Office of Outreach and Prevention, which is a subset of our health department. And that's where the community liaison model is housed.
So we can go to the next slide, please. So here we have a bit of a history of this program, but one item, I guess, not featured here is that the story of Medford's MVP program actually began with a planning grant awarded to the city's Office of Environment, which is now merged with the Community Development Office, termed the Office of Planning, Development and Sustainability. And this grant helped to develop the city's climate change vulnerability assessment, which was like a critical first step to understanding our local climate risks. But in the fall of 2019, well, I was starting to work with the city of Medford and the health department. And with my background in public health, particularly in the intersection of climate and health, I was familiar with the MVP program. And so while during my time at this time, I also knew that the health department had long been interested in a community health program with outreach workers embedded in neighborhoods. And so it became clear that the department could play a key role in strengthening social resilience within broader climate resilience efforts. So I had at the time proposed that this community health program that was more of an idea, more of an interest, could be applied through a social resilience lens for climate change. And I'm not sure if many of you here are familiar with the social determinants of health, but these include things like housing stability and food security, strong social networks, which also very much contribute to supporting community adaptive capacity to climate impacts. And so around this time, I was looking at resilience hubs and was particularly drawn to the USDN framework. And so I sort of proposed that we, within the health department, partner with the Office of Environment to look into a new grant that could integrate both this element of social resilience around social determinants of health with resilience hubs and resilience to climate change. And so that is what became the first MVP action grant in the health department. And during this year, it was very much more of a feasibility and interest assessment to understand, what was the interest in a resilience hub in the city of Medford. This was at the time a very new concept for Medford, and so before we would to dive in and to start building this thing, we really wanted to understand if there was an interest from community partners, from other departments, and of course understand what feasibility we would have. So during that first year, we did a couple of community engagement elements. Of course, COVID happened at the same time, and so this very much rapidly shifted how we did our engagement as well. So we very much had to pivot into these online spaces and very much relying on our community partners to support us in our reach, for the webinars, for the surveys, etc. But during this first year, we learned that while there was very much a strong interest from different community organizations and different departments in this resilience hub, and there were many ideas for what it could do and what programs could be within it, there was still a lack of community trust, which we had known about going in, but it became very evident that to make this work, we really needed to go much deeper to ensure that the people most impacted by climate risks were at the center of planning and the design process. So then this ultimately led to the second MVP Action Grant, which piloted this community liaison group. And this funding round was also supported by MAPC. And the liaisons essentially were introducing themselves to the community. They were holding many listening sessions, and they were helping to coordinate the city and nonprofit partners around different community interests based off of the services and programs that already existed, as well as elevating community voices and strengthening trust. And really having those, ears on the ground, quite literally, but also slowly but surely building those relationships, building that trust, and further engaging with the community. And so with this momentum, we entered another round of MVP Action Grant, where we expanded this community liaison program along with ARPA funding. And the program had essentially a two-prong approach. One group of community health workers, who helped residents access mass health, particularly, and other social services. And then another group of climate equity liaisons, who also became the founding members of Medford's Climate Equity Council. And this council is also led by the Planning, Development, and Sustainability Office. And so this group of liaisons, the climate equity liaisons, focused on improving language access, building those community networks, and supporting those most vulnerable to climate impacts, including older adults, lower income residents, and communities of color. And next slide, please. So now with our fourth and current MVP Action Grant, we've restructured this program a little bit again to sustain and expand this work. And so the community health workers have continued their work, but a little bit tweaked as just community liaisons is what we've called them within the name again, where they also provide multilingual support, extending their assistance also beyond this program, but to other city officers and community partner organizations to help strengthen social resilience citywide. Meanwhile, a new group has formed, which we've called the Connectors. And these connectors focus on key areas, such as immigrant support and ESOL, older adults and disabilities, youth engagement, financial security, and food security or food systems. Essentially ensuring that climate adaptation efforts are deeply rooted in various community needs. And this phase of the work is also supported by the Barr Foundation to help us further build capacity and deepen our impact to also address elements of emergency preparedness. And essentially through each stage, Medford's approach to climate resilience has evolved beyond infrastructure to really center on people, on building trust and access, and ensuring that those who are most impacted have the resources and the voice they need to adapt. So I'll pass it over to Catherine.
Okay, next slide, please. So I'm really lucky because I get to take all of Andrian's vision and our insight and the MVP model and put it into practice. And myself, along with our health equity coordinator, Sophie Antoine, really kind of helped direct our dynamic community engagement team, who you can see here. So all those roles, we have faces and names and people that have been making a tremendous impact on the city of Medford. And actually, our mayor stopped by this morning, and she says stopping by the community engagement team meetings is one of her favorite things to do, because she really gets a sense of what's going on in the community and what the needs are, and also a great energy about the collaboration that happens. So as Andrian said, we have two different groups. We have our community liaisons, and those are language specific people that speak both English and a second language, often living or working in the community. So they have connections to their community and are able to build those networking opportunities. So we had a hazard mitigation plan meeting, and they were able to go out and recruit members from their communities to come and be part of this discussion. So it's really invaluable having members of the Haitian Creole speaking community to be able to communicate directly with our community liaisons. So like Andrian says, it's a two-way street. We are working to get information out to the residents about important things that they need to be, we want to make sure they're informed of. And also we're learning things like people not being enrolled in mass health, things like different challenges that community members are facing. The community liaisons are doing that work and setting up connecting residents to those services. So just the last 2 months alone, they've enrolled over 150 individuals into mass health. So having office hours in City Hall, things like that, where we're really breaking down the barriers for new residents, more vulnerable residents to access city services where they feel comfortable. They hosted a winter preparedness night here in City Hall where we really wanted, a lot of people aren't used to the winter weather. So we had hundreds and hundreds of coats donated, other service agencies present, and we saw I think over 200 residents come into City Hall on a Wednesday night, getting winter clothing and also learning about resources such as, fuel assistance and other vital programs that are available. So Natasha and Darlene are Haitian Creole community liaisons, and they both have a long history of living here in Medford and know a lot of have a lot of connections with some of the faith-based organizations, with our local housing authority. So those relationships and those networks are really important. We have Marilea is our Brazilian Portuguese community liaison, also a resident of the community. She has been phenomenal in working with our Brazilian Portuguese business owners. A lot of them might be interested in opportunities through the city to, work on their trash program or work on signage grants. And so she is the one that has built those relationships with those business owners, connecting them to resources here at City Hall. And she's also a whiz with Mass Health. We all go to her. She's really an expert on that. Jennifer Alvarez is our Spanish community liaison. She's a mom in the schools, and she really has a pulse on what's going on in the community with our Spanish speaking, has started to do outreach to some of our Spanish speaking churches and really filling us in with the trends on most recently what she's hearing from residents who are maybe nervous about immigration status, things like that. So we're working with her to figure out what word we need to get out. And Samira is our Arabic community liaison, another resident who has a wonderful relationship with our Arabic speaking community and is connected to people to a lot of resources, everything from domestic violence situations to setting up meetings with city councilors where they want to hear the needs of the Arabic community. So our community liaisons are really dynamic, and we're so fortunate to have them be part of our team and representing the city. And they all of our community liaisons are city employees. They have badges, they have phone numbers. And when we talked about building those communication channels, they've been really creative. We have a Facebook page, but they have language-based WhatsApp groups. So we've developed these specific channels where they were saying a lot of people are getting information via WhatsApp. So they found that to be a much more successful way to get information out around this summer when we had the wildfires, when we had heat emergencies, when we wanted to get quick information out to folks. The WhatsApp channels have worked very well and are a way for people to kind of dialogue back and forth around resources. So that's our community liaisons. And then, as Andrienne said, we adapted our community connector roles to really focus on our themes. So all of our community connectors are part of our climate equity council. So they're doing the climate work, but then they're also focused on our different resilience themes. Really, this is after learning from having this community liaison models. What do people need? What areas are we kind of missing? And so we realized one of the biggest needs was ESOL. There are not enough ESOL classes. There are not enough resources supporting new immigrants. So we have our ESOL coordinator, Barakatullah, who really brings all the different ESOL providers across the city together in quarterly meetings. He's constantly networking. He says, oh, Tufts has a new class over here. The library has this class. We have volunteers here. He's coordinating it and has really increased the ESOL capabilities of the city of Medford. Because even though we, are a dynamic city, can sometimes be a resource desert. Malden has a lot of resources. Somerville has a lot of resources. A lot of the nonprofit hubs are there. So we sometimes have to say, hey, could you offer a pilot program over in Medford? So the ESOL coordinator has been vital for that. We have Charbel, who is our financial security connector. So he's really talking about and working with folks on job readiness, working with Mass Hire, working with Bunker Hill Community College to bring in opportunities here in Medford and letting residents know what are those different programs available at some of our local community colleges that are a good entryway to some of those most in-demand jobs and maybe jobs that don't require a significant level of education or English. So he has been doing that along with our heating assistance connection and programs. So we are very fortunate to have Charbel. We have Libby, who's our food systems connector, and she's looking at our, thing everywhere from our mini pantries and community fridge to our relationship with the Mystic Market, our delivery programs, and really looking at what is needed more, coordinating our Food Justice Council, where we have people with lived experience with food insecurity, informing around gaps and really communicating to the community what is available and really taking a look at that SNAP gap here in Medford and how can we reduce it and what are some strategies with our partners to do so. So that's Libby. We have June, who is our older adult connector. So she is really taking a look at two different groups. She's looking at our homebound seniors who, again, can be some of the most vulnerable in climate crises or be impacted when I'm sure everyone's opening up their heating bills right now and kind of in shock across the state. And that's happening here in Medford. So our homebound seniors, we're concerned about them. We're looking at systems for how we can connect to them. We did an Are You OK program during COVID, and we're kind of tipping back into that. Like, how do we reach out to those homebound seniors and engage them and see what their needs are? And she's partnering with our public health nurse on homebound vaccinations, things like that. And really, one of the things that we've seen is that we have a younger adult population that aren't utilizing senior centers. They're 60 to 70, and they actually want to give back. So we're looking at developing a program where our older adults are doing that engagement with our older homebound seniors, and that's starting to work really well. And we're really proud of the work that June's doing, and also she's working with our liaisons to say, our senior center newsletter is not publicized in other languages, and it's not it's not diverse enough. So she's partnering with our liaisons to really outreach to different communities. So we're fortunate with that. And then we have Lizette, who's our climate equity connector. So she chairs our climate equity council. She's the one that's working really with our environmental planner upstairs to look at how do we do this outreach and how do we engage people in planning efforts, whether it's hazard mitigation or putting in a new development somewhere. How do we engage our different communities with those discussions? So, and she's also a climate educator, so an energy educator. So she's run workshops over at the senior center. She's run workshops in multiple languages and is really passionate about the climate work and explaining to folks why climate work is important and impacts them, and having those meaningful dialogues. And then last person, Stacy is our African American community liaison. And she has been doing some wonderful work, especially in times like Black History Month, partnering with our West Medford Community Center, which is a historically African American community center here in Medford, and talking about some of the injustices that have been done in the past as far as planning and who has been left out of the community, out of these important conversations. And Stacy's wonderful about speaking up, like, hey, have you brought this, to this group, or have you thought about in doing this presentation or talking about these plans to this church? So she's constantly reminding us and bringing that voice to the conversation. All right, next slide. All right, and then these are just some, just wanted to show you some pictures of some of these, the way that they do this work. So that first photo is Charbel doing climate education at city events and festivals. We found the face-to-face engagement, spinning the wheel, talking about it, getting folks to open up and discuss, and talking about some of the climate-friendly options that we have, and learning about some ways that they can sign up for cost-saving programs has been extraordinarily successful. And we have lots of community events in Medford that our team kind of takes turns signing up for. Right there in the middle is Marilea with the sign that's in the lobby at City Hall around mass health. And like I said, she is the most popular person at City Hall. Her office, when she has open office hours, and the other community liaisons, we see a line of residents lining up. And then, and there's an example of the ESOL classes that we offer at the Bloomberg Library. And that's one of our resiliency hubs. And we really saw it come into play where the ESOL participants, as part of their process, got to learn about what's available at the library. So they all got library cards. They were able to connect to resources at the library. And then when we had a major heat event, they all started to spend more time at the library because it was a cooling center, and started to tell friends and family about the services available at our library. And they learned even we have a maker space at our library where you can, for free, rent everything from, or not rent, but borrow anything from a food dehydrator to a sewing machine. So they were able to start to utilize some of these services to sustain themselves economically with picking up mending and things to enhance their home income. Next slide. And then some other success events we have. We've really worked to, like I said, do cultural events where community members really feel like the city values their culture, honors their culture, and having events at City Hall, at the library, at our different, at the schools has been key to getting people more comfortable and accessing services at City Hall or the library or the schools. So that's that was a Spanish Heritage Month. We had a Brazil event, a Brazil Day, Independence Day Festival in front of City Hall this summer, and that actually leading the national anthem was one of our police officers who immigrated here from Brazil. And then we look at a lot around the social determinants of health, like Andrian said, and we found that behavioral health is a significant issue and barrier, with stigma being the primary reason that people aren't accessing behavioral health care. So our team did pretty significant community needs assessment around the stigma around behavioral health, and came up with a multilingual campaign to get the word out. And this was through another community health grant, but it kind of shows that once you have this team in together, and you can look at other funding opportunities to address other issues. So this was specifically around behavioral health barriers, and it was just a $15,000 grant, but we accomplished a lot. And by the end, we had billboards on 93. We had pushing this communication out through the WhatsApp and social media, and ended up having over 30,000 people engaged in the campaign. So it can really show you the power of this community engagement model. Next slide. And then just a few other events. The schools have been a significant partner in our community engagement team. So we have, from the police to the fire, all of our major city departments are a part of the community engagement team, and then our nonprofit partners. So the schools wanted to partner with the community engagement team to run a health and social services fair. So we did that. We had flu clinics. We constantly have the schools reaching out to community engagement team members when they need some help with specifically a bilingual situation where they need them to outreach to the family. So it's been a great kind of two-way street with a lot of our partners. They recently reached out about kindergarten registration. Believe it or not, they were having an issue with a lot of people not knowing about kindergarten registration early enough. So they reached out to the team and said, "What can we do about it?" And the team said, "Well, we can do something on WhatsApp. We can put yard signs out in the different languages about kindergarten registration." And so they really teamed up with the schools and brainstormed and came up with a solution. So it's been great, and that's really how a lot of the work goes. We bring our community partners in. So, for example, we had the fire chief came in and said, "How can we recruit a more diverse workforce?" And the team really strategized with the fire chief and said, "Well, maybe you could do this, or maybe you could do that." So bringing our city leaders and different stakeholders in the community to our community engagement meetings, and having those dynamic discussions with them with action plans that come out is making a positive difference in the way the whole community thinks about moving forward. Next slide.
Okay,
turn it over to Andrea.
This one's mine. So, of course, while all of these success stories and ways that this model works very well, it does not come without its challenges. So we also wanted to make sure that we cover the areas where we do have challenges. Of course, we can always talk about the wins, but we also wanted to make sure that folks interested or piloting this model can maybe learn from some of the experiences of the Medford team. So the 5 challenges that we'll be reviewing today are first around skills and capacity building, the second on maintaining momentum, third, overcoming conflict, the fourth on payment structures, and finally ending on building city buy-in. Next slide, please. So one challenge that we faced, and this is a challenge that we faced pretty early on, but also occurs anytime there is onboarding, if either someone leaves and we have to hire someone new, or when the program expands with new funding, grant funding, and we also hire a new community liaison. But the challenge that we faced here is it tends to be a mismatch in some of the skills and abilities of our liaisons with some of the expectations of municipal work and a municipal work environment as well. And so, like Catherine mentioned, our community liaisons, our community engagement team members are everyday Medford residents. Many of them work part-time jobs in addition to this contribution or this program. And so some of them work as receptionists or store clerks and other roles in the community or nearby. And many without degrees, like a public health degree, a planning degree, or municipal experience going into this role. Yet they do take on many responsibilities when they join this team. And some of these responsibilities include things like event planning, outreach, project management, and really often learning on the job. But of course, not everyone thrives that way. And the training that we do offer doesn't always align with the tasks when they happen and the timelines of like building in the training with the grants because we're fully grant funded in this program. So the alignment of finding a training might not have been projected ahead of time. And so sometimes we run into those challenges. So addressing this means also rethinking how we support skill building to set both the liaisons and the city up for success.
Yeah, so like Andrian said, some of the things that we've really tried to do is they are learning from each other, especially the community liaisons. Some might be stronger in mass health enrollment. Some might have more knowledge on how to do a fuel assistance application or something else. So we really try to utilize our hour-and-a-half community engagement team meetings for them to share what they're working on. So we have an agenda where we tie it to the grant deliverables. So they're around the theme, they're around the grant deliverables, but they're sharing out. So there's a discussion and they're supporting one another. So we really have that. They're learning a lot from one another. Developing mechanisms for community liaisons to communicate in ways that will be well received by city leaders. A lot of people working in a municipality is new, and they said, why can't I just have the city councilors over to my backyard and talk to a bunch of the folks from my community? I'm like, well, there's politics involved and like people aren't finding out about this grant for immigrant businesses or something like that. Like, okay, let's think about how we want to structure that email. Do you want to send me a draft of it and we can work on it? So it is a lot of learning as you go in, and they do need the support from both myself or in our community, our health equity coordinator. So to say that this program is fine on its own without the management, you do need some someone that understands municipalities. I've worked with my stormwater person in my previous community to write grants and stuff. So understanding, this is the angle that person's going to be coming from, and this is the angle, this is what's important to that person. So learning municipality is key. And really understanding from them, what do you want to, we are here to train you and make you better at your job. What do you want to learn? So I actually just had a community liaison saying, I'd really like to take a computer skills class. And the mass hire one is full. Okay, let's look for another one. So we really try to, they all have different baseline trainings, community through Mass Health, they have to become CAC certified, but what other trainings do they want to help them be better at their work? And then there are trainings that we will suggest for them, like climate and health equity trainings, things like that. So it's really, they do feel, when they come to us, that we can support them with those training needs. Next slide.
And so another challenge that we've seen within this program is that within the day-to-day tasks and deliverables that sometimes liaisons can lose sight of the bigger purpose. And particularly these MVP action grants are quite large with many moving parts. So it's easy to get caught up in the details of the grant, sort of checking the boxes of task done instead of seeing the larger impact. And of course, when this happens, morale can drop. So the key here is making sure that the community liaisons stay connected to the why behind the work, so they feel empowered and engaged, not just overwhelmed by the process. And then Catherine can share some of um, the tips on how to do that.
Yeah, so a lot of it is kind of celebrating back each week, like, okay, you accomplished this, and why does this connect to the bigger vision for the MVP grants? Like, okay, you had this super successful English language learners family night. Why was this important? And us to share the feedback that we've been hearing from the schools since then, but to do straight line, delineate why this is connecting to the deliverables of the MVP grant. The other thing too is we try to use current events to talk about why, we'll use the California wildfires and we'll have a discussion around that. Who was disproportionately impacted? Where are they putting the waste right now from that event? Oh, this community, so we have discussions about planning and climate inequities that are happening real time across the country and across the world. And it really does. We talk about that social resiliency and why that's so important. We talk about those success stories so they can replicate it here in our own community. Like I said before, city leaders have come to value our community liaisons and go to them for help and advice. And that's helped having them come to the meetings and seeing what the community liaisons and the community connectors are doing. And like, wow, this group is amazing. And then they would say, hey, could they help with this or could they help with that? So we saw having our different department heads, even the parking director came and was learning a lot in that discussion with the community liaisons, and saying, what challenges are you hearing from the community? And they had a dynamic discussion, and they came up with some low-hanging fruit on things to address around parking situations around the city. Or like I said, our economic development person came in and had a really great discussion about grants available. So I think those have been helpful. And then we always do fun incentives, like for getting social media, or whoever can get the most people on their WhatsApp channel will order dinner of their choice next month or something. So fun incentives keep the momentum going as well. Next slide.
So as our community liaison program has grown, so have the challenges that come with working within a larger team, especially when it comes to disagreement. With many more voices at the table, there are naturally more perspectives, which can sometimes lead to conflict. And whether that be between the liaisons themselves or between liaisons and city staff even. But we don't necessarily think that this disagreement is necessarily a bad thing, but can also lead to stronger ideas and really help shape our program. But with that, we've needed to create some structures that help us to navigate the conflict productively, while also, of course, keeping collaboration and our shared goals at the center.
Yeah, so as I said before, really using those meetings to share what people are working on, because sometimes in any workplace you're like, I'm working really hard. What are they doing? And the agendas and the meetings really show like, wow, that person is doing a lot. And then the other thing is we link to our upcoming calendar and we show where people need help. So if I'm doing a climate event with with the city sustainability committee, then I know I need 4 people at this event next Saturday. So they ask each other to help out at events, and that helps build that decrease the conflict. And then this is something too, we're trying to be more transparent around hiring processes, the task budget, so including them in the budget capabilities, what's allowed, what's not allowed, timeline. And I do have to do a shout out to our health director who is my boss. And sometimes I'll say, they've heard it from me around this. They've heard it from other people. I say, I'll need you to come in and say it again, because sometimes messages don't, as many times as you say it aren't coming through. So sometimes we need to, escalate things that become challenges. Next slide.
So as we talked about, the liaisons are currently part of the employee or part-time employee structure, but it wasn't always that way. So payment structures have been one of our, I would say, biggest logistical challenge within the community liaison program, and structuring payments that work both within what the city is capable of doing and that also are best suited for our liaisons. So we noticed that the gift cards can work better or are suited for the more occasional participation, but weren't really suitable or feasible within this more ongoing work structure. And so we did try to do liaisons as contractors, but that came with the added challenges of tax withholdings, deductions, and insurance requirements that added a layer of complexity, and also potentially risk that wasn't really sustainable also with the group that we had. So while we struggled a little bit with figuring out how to offer potentially a full-time role within MVP funding, and we realized that wasn't really possible, we did try to do essentially a part-time 15-hour-a-week setup. But this is also a challenge given that, as I mentioned, a lot of the liaisons also have other jobs, and sometimes they're working full-time jobs or part-time, managing other part-time jobs, like more than these two. So that adds to the struggle of scheduling, especially meetings or partners, working with partners on their schedules, etc. So finding the right balance remains an ongoing challenge, but Catherine can also share about some of the ways that they've been working on this.
And I just want to mention, because this is actually one of the questions in the chat, and I previously worked in a smaller municipality, and I had seen Medford's community engagement model and said, wow, that's amazing. I asked them for the job descriptions, and I scaled down the community liaisons to work in my smaller community. And I just had one Spanish speaking, one Portuguese liaison. And I wasn't able to put them on salary, but we were able to do more of a stipend position, and was able to get some of the same outcomes. So it is possible to scale this down. But for our grant deliverables, the 15 hours work well. And they are proud. They have business cards. They have WebEx phone numbers that go right to their cell phones. They have badges. They are city employees. And I think that says a lot to the community when they see people that represent them working at City Hall. So the employees really shows, I have a badge, I can get into the City Hall, I have a city email address. Those little things add up and mean a lot. And then like our timesheets, really connecting the hours that they're working to deliverables. So they can do them electronically, but we need to know what you were doing those 2 hours on Saturday. Okay, you were working on heating assistance with residents at the library. Just put that into your timesheet so we can really break down those hours and connect them to grant goals. Next slide.
And so for our final challenge that we'll talk about today is about securing long-term funding and getting that city buy-in to sustain the program. And so right now, as we mentioned, the entire program relies on grant funding. But for the program to truly last, we, of course, also need commitment from city leadership. And this is something that is ongoing and something that we're building, and through different partnerships with different departments, different offices, making sure that the program's impact is being shared both externally to our community, which is where a lot of the focus had been, but also internally, promoting to leadership, promoting to the other departments why this program is valuable, not just for the health department, but for the community at large and specifically their departments. And that Catherine can speak a little bit more to that.
Yeah, so like we said, with the department heads coming to the meetings, but also going down to the meetings to different departments or having those conversations. One department that sees the need is the city clerk's office. They're seeing the challenges facing new residents who are maybe picking up birth certificates or getting married or things like that. So it's building unique partnerships in different ways with our different municipal partners. And they really do start to see the value when we're talking about, hey, we're hearing this is a need. And they said, yeah, we see that too. How can we partner together and come up with some solutions around that? So that has been, work in progress. And we're really interested in learning from some of the other MVP communities, the unique ways that they've partnered with their different city departments in engagement. And we're hoping to learn just as much from our partners, our partners across the state, as hopefully you are learning from us. Next slide. And that's it. So if you have any questions for us.
Yes, thank you very much. So yeah, at this point, we are going to be transitioning over to our Q&A / discussion, where we really want to just open it up to everyone that's on the webinar. The way that we will do it, we're going to have a few of our MVP RCs joining us. First, I do want to introduce Kara Runston, who is our MVP director. And then, yeah, Kara.
I was just going to say hi. Thanks everybody for joining. And yeah, thanks for the great presentation.
Yes. So the two ways that we can do it is that you can, whichever you feel comfortable with, you can either raise your hand and we will give you permission to ask the question, and that way you can kind of vocalize it. Or if you'd like to just add your question to the Q&A, we can do it that way as well. So hang on, I'm just going to be bumping up a few of our EAA colleagues to the panel. And just again, on the screen is our list of regional coordinators. If you would like to reach out to your specific regional coordinator anytime, their contact info is here. Yeah, 1 second. While I'm bumming up everyone, I want to ask the first question, and this is for the Medford team. The first question is, the Medford group of CLs is much larger than my town staff. What an amazing resource. Curious if Andrienne has had any thoughts about how to connect these potential folks in a smaller, seemingly less diverse municipality.
Sure, I can try to take a stab, and then I don't know if Catherine wants to share more based off her experience replicating in a smaller community. But one thing that I'll say is while Medford is perhaps seemingly more diverse when it comes to potentially language or race and ethnicity, there are other elements here in this program around age or families with children, especially young children, teens and youth, that I think apply to almost every community. So like choosing within existing, I would say within existing structures and programs, whether there's a school parent teacher association, parent teacher organization, whether there's a senior center or a group focused on older adults, or if there's a youth group or something of that nature that already exists in the community that you can start by partnering with them if you don't necessarily have the resources to be either hiring or stipending, et cetera, different individuals to join your particular team. So that's what I would say, I guess, to the diversity element and potentially the funding structure. But I think Catherine can speak a little bit more to maybe the smaller community element.
Yeah, I would agree with that. In a smaller suburban community that I previously worked in, we did have an emerging language need that was coming, not, we were really seeing it in the schools. So I always say, look at your schools and that, because that's showing you the emerging populations. If there are different immigrant groups, you'll see that in the school population. So having those conversations. And I agree, some of the most exciting work can be done with the Council on Aging seniors. There really are some of our most vulnerable. And like we said, when we see climate impacts or economic impacts happen, it's to them and it's to our young people too. So, if there's an opportunity to support the development of a youth council or youth engagement in your planning, a lot of communities are starting to do that with their planning work is bringing young people to the table, and that can be done with any kind of community assessment, like a photo voice or a strategy, community assessment involving youth and seniors. And the other community that we want to make sure that we're including is disabled too. So looking at your commission on disability and involving them in conversations.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Great answers. All right. Next is, how long did it take you to build this relationship, and what happens if one of the liaisons resign?
So I can speak at least to some of the length. So as I mentioned, we had a 1-year grant when we started to even just assess feasibility or interest in a resilience hub or a way to connect different partners and departments together. And so that year was very foundational for us to be able to share our vision and to share what it is that we are hoping to achieve to slowly build that shared trust around values or around the vision again that we were trying to build and trying to connect on those shared values and vision. And I keep saying that because we didn't actually have anything by the end of that other than a shared interest. But that shared interest led to what I guess we can call our founding partners, our founding members of what we call this initiative is Medford Connects. So our founding partners of Medford Connects really helped us then slowly build even more relationships over the next 2 years of that within their community groups, within partners that they were slowly establishing. So it really was very much like a snowball effect of growing our membership of partners who then also bring with them members who trust them, and then they get to know each other, and then slowly building trust within the group and shared membership. So I would say that the initial foundation of building those relationships took at least 2 years. But of course, there's still work in progress, even when this relationship isn't at a working level. It's still within, we're having meetings, we're discussing ideas, we're brainstorming. We're bringing them in the fold of the design and the planning and the ideation. We're bringing, asking that they either bring or help recruit for different events, for different listening sessions, so that they can also listen in to see, like, what are we actually talking about? What do we care about? How do we follow through with after our engagement activities? So that was, I guess, to answer, a slow build, but also there's still work occurring even as you're building the relationship as well, because trust is something that also is demonstrated. And then as for what happens, oh, go ahead. Yeah, Catherine.
I was just about to say, we haven't lost too many members of the team as far as resigning goes, which hopefully, speaks to their, that they see that their work is making an impact. The other thing too is our ability to be flexible when, like Andrea said, a lot of these folks have full-time jobs. So actually, one of our Haitian community connectors got a new full-time job where she was commuting in to work in Dorchester. So we said, well, why don't we take the two, Natasha and Darlene, why don't you split a full-time role? Because you're both so valuable, or not a full-time, but a full-time connector position, which is 15 hours. So they're doing 7 and 8 hours each. So just having the ability to be flexible to meet their needs, because instead of, saying, oh, we'll just hire someone new.
Great, thank you very much. All right, and then next is more of a general question from Don Bolduc, and there are at least a few communities that use the community engagement team model. Is there a place that these communities come together to share experience and resources? And this might be a question for more of the MVP team.
I can tell you, we would like that. We would definitely like that. And we've talked about field trips, because we've seen some of the work that some of the other communities are doing, like Revere and Cambridge, and our team would be interested in
that. But this is interesting. We do field trips, and we also do these cohort peer-to-peer learning models. So it really sounds like there are people who are queued up for some sharing and pairing of information in this engagement space. So I have to write that down. So it's a good idea.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great comment. All right, next is, so for the Medford team, how do you track or measure the impact of the Community Liaison program? I am curious about any qualitative or quantitative measures.
Yeah, so that's something Andrienne and we actually have a coordinator who's part-time, who helps us manage the quantitative and qualitative. So we've actually moved over to a weekly reporting system for them, so we can look at anything from the amount of people that they've helped enroll in Mass Health, to how they spent their time, so we can get the quantitative. This is how many residents I engaged with this week, and these were the things I helped them with, to more of the qualitative, what happened when you organized that, the Brazilian Community Festival, what businesses were engaged, what were some of the outcomes. So the reporting on a weekly basis, we were doing monthly reporting, and we found it was hard for them to remember what happened at the beginning of the month. So the weekly reporting, just through a Google form, and each of them, the connectors have deliverables that we've written into the MVP. So it really is writing in around those deliverables, reporting. And then the liaisons, I hosted a coffee at the library with the Arabic community. This is how many people attended, and these were some of the outcomes. Andrea, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I'll also share that we have sort of these informal check-ins with our partners to also assess, how much our team has supported, or what also maybe we could improve upon to help better support our partners, our departments, and our offices. That said, I'll add that we haven't integrated a citywide impact assessment or evaluation We were curious about that, but we were quoted a very, very high figure that we are not able to adapt or to address at this very moment. But of course, this is of interest because we would like to see how this program is supporting community-wide. But I think it does require a little bit more of like a sophisticated evaluation that we don't necessarily have the tools, I guess you could say, to conduct at this moment.
Great, thank you. One other question we have is, so you mentioned several co-benefits for responding in real time to community stressors as a result of the Community Liaison program. One of the elements that really stands out to me is the extent to which this trust building process has yielded real-time community benefits in trying times. Do you anticipate that this work would have such immediate impacts? Did you anticipate that this work would have such immediate impacts?
No, I think we really started conversations about, very open-ended. What do you think you would need to feel supported by the city? What do you think you would need to reach resilience, whatever that means to you? And we tried to adapt as we could accordingly with the resources that we had, with the partnerships that we had at the time, and being able to grow this network of partners, build this trust and relationships, I think has been able to show this direct impact, I suppose, of watching this network grow and the impact that it's had. And I will say also there are some very surprising things that have come out of it too. And this is, Catherine touched a little bit upon the domestic violence element, but I will say from a personal standpoint, this was something that I was not expecting to come out of our engagement. But I think with building trust, like with the community trusting liaisons and the connectors and engaging with them more regularly, that they can express more of even their personal situations with the liaisons more directly as a trusted person in the community who might be able to help them access different resources. And I will say that this came out of a very specific climate conversation about, what happens if there's a major flooding event and you have to shelter in place, or talking about sheltering in place in general. And that brought up these questions about what about safety in one's home? What happens then? And it brought up more of these more personal issues that, again, ties that social resilience element to the climate impacts as well. That, again, I personally was not expecting at the time. But also, like, again, the immediacy of like watching how, this is helping everyday people in everyday situations, both the urgent or the emergency ones, as well as just the everyday access ones, has been very gratifying to be a part of. And I know Catherine joined more recently, so she can also share.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that's been helpful is through our Bar Foundation funding, we are able to pay part of the salary for one of the city's communications specialists. So that if we have emergency information or information that we want to get out because we see something, we're hearing something in the community, or like the wildfire smoke or something like that, she'll quickly create the message. Then we'll send it to our community engagement team. They'll get it translated and pushing it out through their communication channels. So that's been something that while we have it here, let's use it. Let's get this information out. And then with the current political climate, there's a lot of concern. So we at meetings are saying, what are you hearing? What are the things that we can do to put out FAQs around the rumors you're hearing and things like that. So that's really helpful for then us to communicate to the city. This is what residents are really stressed about or challenged by.
Excellent, thank you. All right, so next is, I missed the first half hour, so this may have been covered, but other people likely did too. So the degree of support for community engagement by the current presidential administration, are there ways that the MVP community are addressing potential challenges vis-a-vis various communities that may be or perceive to be at risk?
I mean, that was something I was just talking about where we can kind of do what we can to understand what fears are out there and what myths might be going around and try to connect people to, and bring in someone like Greater Boston Legal Services or Mira or somebody to run a workshop or around you know, our LGBT community, trying to put resources out there and continuing to support what we know the city has supported in the past and not changing that. I don't know, Andrea, if you have anything to add to that.
No, nothing specific, but I do think that the element of like being clear also of what the connectors or the community liaisons and the city can, the extent to which we can support, and because I do think that within these challenges they do go beyond the the scope of the health department or the jurisdiction of the municipality, and even beyond sometimes even the state. And I think that we have been careful about not trying to offer promises because we don't know what can or cannot be achieved, but we do try to at least connect to resources like Catherine mentioned and bring in folks who are a little bit more connected to elements of the law specifically, like immigration law or, you know, the LGBTQ community and the laws that protect those communities to help inform and then spread the word amongst our liaisons and within the community about knowing their rights.
Thank you very much. And so just we want to do, as I'm seeing there's no more current questions, I do just want to kind of remind everyone again one more time about our program updates, where you can now apply for the MVP Action Grant. We would love to have you join our MVP Climate Newsletter, which many of you might have been able to see from our that joined this because of this. And then also that the Climate Resilience Playbook has been developed in partnership with MAPC and PVPC, and it's an online interactive tool that local planners can use to identify and scope out resilient actions for their communities. This will be released in the spring. And then also that we are getting ready to announce the next wave of awarded communities in MVP 2.0, and there has been significant updates to the process based on pilot round feedback. So with that, just want to do a last call for questions. All right. Well, seeing none, we do just really want to thank everyone that joined us today. And a reminder that we will be hosting another webinar on March 6th, and we would love to have you join. We really enjoy bringing our communities together and want to continue to do exciting stuff like this in the future. Well, with that, we can end a few minutes early, and we really thank you all for coming.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.